Hey, so I'm here once again to rank some stuff from the X-Men movies. I did a video on all of Magneto's helmets, so go check that out if this kind of thing interests you. Today, I'll be ranking all of Cyclops' visors and other types of eye protection gear that he sported in the movies. But unlike Magneto's helmet, which was reinvented every time he was in a movie, Cyclops' stuff doesn't get changed as much during the movies. But there is some change, so I'll go into what I like and what I don't like. With my Magneto video, it pretty much was all personal preference, and there's still going to be some of that here, but I'll also be ranking based on practicality, which is something you don't really have to think about with the Magneto helmet since it was all aesthetic. So let's get into it. Coming in at dead last is the look from X-Men The Last Stand. I know Cyc is basically retired by this point, but what if you come across some situation that needs some fine-tuning and not the entire power of the sun all at once? With the glasses you take on and off, it's an all or nothing thing. There's no controlling the amount of force you release, so if you need to take out a gunman but leave the hostage unharmed, you're kinda up the creek if you've got these things on. Plus, I hate the way they look. They look like they could pop off the head and turn into a Decepticon from the planet Cybertron at any moment. Less is more, I think. Just get some regular looking sunglasses that have red lenses. Just because these movies are kind of sci-fi set in the near future maybe, that doesn't mean you need to make the glasses look like they were designed by an alien. Next, we have whatever it is he's wearing in the good future portion of Days of Future Past. I remember people saying they air quotes fixed Cyclops' look in this scene, but I hate this. For one, I don't like the color of it. It almost looks white, but maybe that's just the lighting. It's probably a light silvery color, but I still don't like that. I prefer Cyclops' visor to be in the dark blue to black range, since in the comics, dark blue is what color his costume usually is. And once again, less is more. This looks like it's got some kind of computer interface on it, which makes more sense here than the unusual design in The Last Stand, because this portion of the movie was set in the year 2024, but I still think you can just go with basic sunglasses and leave it at that. Now, it is possible that these double as his civilian going out in public glasses and his combat visor. If that is a computer display type thing, maybe he can control the severity of the blast with these without having to switch to another visor. And if that's true, then I would give this thing a big promotion, since that would be very handy. I imagine Cyclops doesn't want to freak out the locals when he's wearing his visor, so if he could wear something that looks normal and can function against enemies, that would be a big plus. But that is just speculation on my part, since we don't get to see this thing in action. And even if that is what's going on, this still looks weird and would still probably freak out the mom in the first movie just as much as the regular combat visor. Next, this one probably shouldn't even be on the list, but we have this thing that Stryker put on Cyclops in X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's not meant to release his powers at all, but block them, which is why it shouldn't even be on this list. But I love the look of it. If we could have had some ruby quartz version of this, I think this would have been at the very top of my list. I just love the look of it. I think it's cool, and I can't really get any more into it than that. Next is the non-combat glasses that he has in the first two movies. As near as I can tell, they didn't change the design on these in between movies, so I'm lumping these two movies into one category here. Same deal as the other non-combat models, it's just more dangerous than the visor if he needs to use his powers at the drop of a hat. I don't know, maybe the visor is more uncomfortable, that's possible, I guess. These are fine. If we weren't talking about practical use of them, I wouldn't have any problem with these at all. And then there's the glasses he wears in most of X-Men Apocalypse. I like these just a little better than his non-combat glasses from the original trilogy because they look more like normal glasses a civilian would wear, while the original trilogy glasses make him look more like a secret agent in the Matrix or something. Even if he doesn't care if people stare at him, it might be strategically advantageous to blend in with a big crowd if you have to, which is where these would come in handy. And yes, these you have the same problem as other models of non-combat glasses, but I give this a pass because Xavier never meant for Cyclops to be in the field in this movie, so these were just meant to keep him from killing everyone he looked at. And coming back to X-Men Origins Wolverine, we have what he wore when Sabretooth kidnapped him. I've got some questions, like where did he get these glasses that hold back his optic blasts before he even met Professor X, but it's fine, that's not even the 10th most problematic thing about this movie. I like these, I would have ranked them higher, but since we're judging partly based on practicality, I can't really put them any higher. Once again, you've got the same problem with all of the other non-combat glasses in that he can't control the blasts he releases, but like X-Men Apocalypse, this isn't as problematic because Cyclops hasn't joined the X-Men yet, so that can be forgiven. And I just think they look cool. They remind me of the big huge aviator type glasses he used to wear in the 1980s X-Factor comics, and I like the design of those, which is why I have these as high on the list as I do. Okay, if we weren't going for practicality, I would have put the visor from the first X-Men movie much closer to the bottom of the list. I always forget how goofy this thing looks. It looks like he's about to go mow the yard, which I guess they were thinking of how this visor actually works, and we do see him turn on a dial on the side to change the settings, which is something we don't ever get to see again in these movies. And I have talked about how the visor is ideal for controlling the setting of the blast, but this still looks really silly. I think the other combat visors that he uses, they could have found some way to have him control different degrees of blast without putting these Princess Leia hair buns on the side. Next is the combat visor he wears at the very end of X-Men Apocalypse. If we were doing a list just based on my personal preferences and not on practical use of the visor, I would probably have this one closer to the bottom of the list, just because we see so little of it. I ranked the red Magneto helmet at the end of First Class kinda low because of how little we saw it in the overall series, but I could forgive someone for thinking we would see more of that helmet in future movies after that scene. But by the time you get to X-Men Apocalypse, they kept ignoring what they were setting up in previous movies, so I wasn't fooled into thinking that we would see these costumes again, so it was hard for me to get excited for what we saw. Also, the color is a light silver once again, and I'm not crazy about that. And I can't really tell what he uses to control the blasts or even release blasts. It looks like maybe it's touch activated like those lamps, which maybe isn't the best design, because what if his nose itches and he accidentally touches the visor? The more I look at this one, the more I want to put it lower on the list, but I can't rightly put it with the non-combat glasses because theoretically this is more practical if we saw it in action. But I do not care for the look of it, but it does beat out the lawnmower gear from the first X-Men movie. And speaking of that visor, I must not have been the only one who didn't like that design, because in X2 they got rid of the side things and it still looks like there's a dial on the side that he could use to control the blast with, which is good. Not much else to say about this. They did improve on what came before, but they weren't completely reinventing the wheel either. So you probably guessed that means I put the visor from Dark Phoenix as number 1. What's the dang deal, man? You put the Magneto helmet from Dark Phoenix as number 2, and now this visor is number 1. I thought that movie sucked. You're right, the movie itself is not great, but I do like some of the designs from that movie. I actually really like the costumes from this one. They look almost exactly like the ones from Grant Morrison's new X-Men run, which I love. So if I ever do a video ranking costumes on the whole from each movie, you can probably expect me to put those pretty high too. But even though the movie itself is disappointing, I do like a lot of the design elements, including Cyclops' visor. I think the biggest thing I love about this is the wider opening. I cannot see myself lasting very long in battle if I've got this paper-thin opening for my blast from the original trilogy visors. This one looks like it doesn't obstruct his vision, which is important when you're saving the world, and I like the color more than the one from Apocalypse. And that's my list. I'm sure you guys don't agree with the placement, so tell me how I'm wrong, and be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. In the meantime, I'll see you guys later with other videos.